I never thought my daughter-in-law would raise her hand to me. Not in my own kitchen. But she did. Hard enough to fracture my wrist. And my son, he didn't even come downstairs. He sent one message instead. Stay away from us. So I did. And that's the day their dream house quietly disappeared. Before I continue, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. I don't share these stories for drama. I share them because sometimes the hardest lessons carry the most truth, and your support means more than you know. I've always been an early riser, not by choice anymore, just habit. At 63, your body wakes before the sun does. 5:30 every morning. I shuffle into the kitchen, joints stiff but dependable. Turn on the kettle. Green tea, 1 spoon of honey, steam rising in the half-light. The house quiet. I've grown fond of quiet. It feels earned. Daniel and Vanessa lived 15 minutes away, a rental near Maple Grove, fresh paint, small yard. I helped with the deposit. Of course I did. Daniel has always been my soft place, my only child. His father left when he was 8, 1 suitcase, no explanation. I worked 2 jobs after that. Day shift at the bank, evening bookkeeping from home. Some nights my feet throbbed so badly I'd sit at the kitchen table with ice wrapped in a dish towel. But I still helped him with his math homework. He used to look at me like I was unbreakable. "You're my superhero, Mom," he'd say. I'd laugh. Because superheroes don't use arthritis cream before bed. When Vanessa came into his life, she was bright, confident, polished. She called me Mom within weeks. It felt flattering at first. She was studying healthcare administration. Tuition was tight. I paid a semester quietly, covered books once or twice. One summer, when her lease fell through, she stayed in my guest room. I cooked. She scrolled on her phone. She rarely offered to wash a dish. But I told myself she was young. You ignore small things when you love someone. Their engagement dinner was at my house. I cooked everything myself. Roast chicken, garlic potatoes, lemon pie from scratch. Daniel gave a toast. He thanked Vanessa for believing in him. Then he turned to me. "For building the foundation," he said. Foundation. That word stayed with me. After the wedding, they started house hunting. A new development on Greenfield Ridge. White siding, wide porch. Big enough for future babies, Vanessa said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel sat at my dining table, fingers tapping nervously. "Mum, we need your help." I already knew. They needed a co-signer, just temporarily. Until everything balances out. It's just paperwork. He looked like he did at 6 years old asking for a bicycle. I hesitated. Not because I didn't trust him, because I had rebuilt my credit slowly after my divorce, painfully, carefully. But then he reached across the table and held my hand. "You've always believed in me," he said, and that was it. I signed. I remember walking out of the bank that afternoon. The sky was bright blue. I told myself this is what parents do. We build ladders, even when our own knees ache from climbing. In the weeks that followed, everything felt hopeful. Daniel called with updates. Vanessa texted cabinet samples. White oak or grey? I chose white oak. I even folded one of my late husband's quilts and set it aside. For their guest room, I whispered to myself. I started picturing holidays there. Little shoes by the door, sticky hands on my countertops. But sometimes, Vanessa's tone would shift. If I asked a question, she'd sigh. If I offered advice, she'd stiffen. One afternoon, I mentioned a pediatric clinic nearby. "Just thinking ahead," I said lightly. She looked at me over her mug. Cold, measured. "We'll handle our own child. I laughed it off, pretended it didn't sting. Daniel didn't say anything. That silence. I should have paid attention to it. Still, I kept believing. Believing in family. Believing in respect. Believing my son would never let anyone make me feel like a guest in his life. I didn't know how quickly warmth can cool. I didn't know how fragile a foundation can be, but that peace was about to end. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary. Quiet. I had stopped by their house to drop off a folder. Updated mortgage documents the bank had emailed me. Daniel was at work. Vanessa opened the door. She didn't smile. "You should have called first," she said. Her tone wasn't loud, just sharp. "I was nearby," I answered gently. "It'll only take a minute." She stepped aside, but reluctantly. The house smelled like fresh paint and something overcooked. Music played from her phone on the counter. Loud, distracting. I set the folder down. "Just wanted to make sure everything's still on schedule." Her shoulders tightened. "It is." "I noticed the appraisal date changed," I added carefully. "Thought you might want to double-check." She slammed her hand against the counter. "We don't need you micromanaging." The word hit harder than it should have. "I'm not micromanaging," I said quietly. "I'm on the paperwork too." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "That's temporary." Temporary. As if I were some loaner item, a tool to be returned. I walked toward the sink. The faucet was dripping. Tiny things bother me. Always have. I reached to tighten it. She grabbed my wrist, hard. I said, "We've got it." Pain shot up my arm. "Vanessa." The slap came before I could finish her name. Fast, sudden. My head snapped sideways. My foot caught the rug. I fell backward. My wrist struck the corner of the kitchen table. The sound was sickening. A crack. White-hot pain surged up my arm. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The room blurred. I tasted blood. She stood above me, chest rising, eyes flat. "You're not welcome here anymore," she said. Not screamed, said. Calm, controlled. I waited for Daniel. I knew he was upstairs. His car was in the driveway. I listened for footsteps. For a door opening. For anything. Nothing. Silence filled the space. Silence can feel heavier than shouting. I pushed myself up slowly. My hand was already swelling. She turned and walked down the hallway, like I wasn't even there. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I picked up my purse with my good hand and walked out. The sunlight outside felt too bright, too cheerful. I sat in my car, breathing hard, trying to steady myself. Then my phone buzzed. "Daniel?" I opened the message. "Please don't come back. It's better this way. Stay away from us." Us. That word did more damage than the fall. I drove to urgent care. Fractured wrist, temporary cast, pain medication. The nurse asked quietly, "Do you want to report anything?" "Not today," I answered. But that wasn't the worst part. That night, alone in my kitchen, I opened the mortgage folder. Greenfield Ridge. Co-signer. My name was still active. Final approval pending. I logged into the bank portal. The cursor blinked on the screen. Withdraw authorization. My finger hovered. I didn't feel furious. I didn't feel dramatic. I just felt finished. Finished pretending I was still part of something. The screen asked, "Are you sure?" "Yes," I whispered. I clicked confirm. The next morning, the loan officer called to verify. "Mrs. Hartley, you're revoking your co-signature?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Remove my name." 10 minutes later, Daniel's calls started. I let them ring. Vanessa texted, "What did you do?" I looked at the message for a long moment, and that's when I knew I would not stay silent. After that, The house felt different. Not quiet in a peaceful way, quiet in a hollow way. I moved slower, not just because of the cast, because something inside me felt bruised too. Making tea with one hand is harder than you think. The kettle feels heavier, the cup feels fragile. I spilled honey on the counter one morning, left it there longer than usual. That's not like me. My phone kept buzzing. Daniel, unknown numbers. I turned it face down. At night, I'd sit in the living room with the lamp on, soft yellow light. I kept replaying the fall in my mind, the crack of bone, her face above me. But what replayed louder was the silence upstairs. He had been there, he heard it, and he didn't come down. Some nights I caught myself whispering his name, not in anger, in disbelief. How does a son go from clutching your hand in a parking lot to standing still while someone hurts you? I passed the hallway mirror one evening, saw the fading bruise along my jaw, purple turning yellow, like a memory trying to soften. I didn't recognize myself for a second. I opened the linen chest and unfolded the quilt I had set aside for their future guest room, ran my fingers across the stitching. My late husband's hands had helped finish the border. I folded it back carefully, placed it deeper in the chest. That felt final. A week later, Daniel showed up. No call, no warning. I opened the door, and there he stood, eyes tired, shoulders slumped. Vanessa was behind him, sunglasses on, arms crossed. "We lost the house," she said immediately. "No hello. Why would you cancel the loan?" Daniel asked quietly. I looked at him. "Why would you ask me to stay away?" I replied. He swallowed. Vanessa stepped forward. "We're pregnant," she said. The word hung between us. Pregnant. My chest tightened. Images rushed forward without permission. Tiny socks. First birthdays. Daniel nodded. "We just found out." But something in her face didn't match the words. There was no softness, no fear, just calculation. They sat on my couch. I stayed standing. "You hurt me," I said gently. Vanessa rolled her eyes. "It was an accident. You're overreacting." Daniel looked at the floor. That's when something shifted inside me. Not rage, clarity. "Do you want me in this child's life?" I asked Daniel. He hesitated, then nodded. Vanessa shrugged. "If you sign again." There it was, not family. A transaction. I opened the folder they brought. Loan extension request. The pen felt heavy in my hand. "I'll sign," I said slowly, "if you apologize." Out loud. Vanessa stared at me like I'd insulted her. "You're serious? About respect?" "Yes," she muttered sorry under her breath. Flat, hollow. I hovered the pen above the paper. Daniel's eyes filled with hope. Then I set the pen down. "I can't," I said quietly. His face fell. "You chose your side," I whispered. "Now I'm choosing mine." They left angry. 3 days later, the listing for Greenfield Ridge went back on the market. They didn't get the house. I heard through a neighbor they moved into a smaller rental across town. And then, a message request appeared on my phone, from Vanessa's younger sister Claire. We hadn't spoken in months. Her message was short. "She's not pregnant." My breath caught. She lied to Daniel. I have proof. A screenshot followed. Vanessa texting. "If I say I'm pregnant, he'll beg his mum to sign again." I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. I just felt cold, like something inside me had finally stopped hoping. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, hands folded, tea untouched. I remembered Daniel at 6 years old, crying because someone shoved him on the playground. He ran to me then. I always protected him, but now he was protecting the wrong person. That night, I pulled out a different folder. The trust documents. I didn't rush. I didn't react. I began to think, very carefully. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from anger, from understanding. There's a difference. Anger is loud. Understanding is quiet and sharper. I sat at my old oak desk by the window, the one Daniel carved his initials into when he was 12. I traced that scratch with my fingertip, slowly. Then I opened the trust file. 3 years ago, I created a discretionary trust for Daniel. Not extravagant, just the savings from decades of careful living. It was meant to be released when his first child was born. I believed in timing, in earned milestones. I picked up the phone and called my attorney, Mrs. Harlan. She answered calmly, as always. "I need to revise the trust," I said. A brief pause. "All right, what's changed?" "Integrity," I replied. We met the next morning. Her office was warm and quiet. Sunlight fell across the desk like a spotlight on something final. I handed her Claire's screenshot. Vanessa's words clear and deliberate. If I say I'm pregnant, Mrs. Harlan read it without expression. She manipulated both of you, she said. Yes, I answered softly. And I won't finance manipulation. I outlined my conditions. Daniel would receive the trust, but only if he filed for divorce. Only if he attended counseling. Only if he publicly acknowledged what happened. If he refused, the funds would go to Claire, the one who told the truth. There was no drama in that room, just paper, ink, and consequence. Mrs. Harlan nodded and began drafting. That afternoon, I sent Daniel a single photo. Header visible, revised distribution plan. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom, he said breathlessly. What is this? It's a choice, I replied. Silence stretched between us. Come talk to me, I added. In person. He arrived within the hour. He looked thinner, older somehow. He stood in my doorway like a child, unsure if he was still welcome. I found the pregnancy test, he admitted quietly. In the trash. It wasn't used. My chest tightened. But I let myself believe her, he continued, because if she was lying, then I ruined everything for nothing. There it was. Fear. Not cruelty. Fear makes people small. Fear makes them freeze. She told me you were controlling, he said, that you wanted to run our lives. I gave him a tired smile. I only ever wanted you safe. He sank onto the couch, shoulders trembling. She's lied about other things too, he whispered. Money, work, everything. I let him unravel. No interruptions, no lectures, just space. She hit you, he said finally. Yes, I heard it, he admitted. I was upstairs. The room felt heavy. I froze, he said. I didn't know what to do. You chose not to move, I answered gently. That landed deeper than anger ever could. He nodded slowly. I'll file, he said. For divorce. And therapy? I asked. Yes, there was no triumph in me, just relief. Because this was never about punishment. It was about stopping the damage. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers were filed. Vanessa left without spectacle. No apologies, no goodbye, just gone. When Daniel called to tell me, his voice sounded clearer. Less fog, more breath. That evening, I stood by my kitchen window with my tea. She hit me in my own kitchen, so I quietly took back everything I signed for. Not out of spite, out of protection. Silence can build walls stronger than shouting. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait. The truth didn't arrive like thunder. It arrived like daylight. Slow, inevitable. 3 weeks after Daniel filed for divorce, we hosted our annual Easter potluck. Same long table, same chipped blue plates. My sister brought her cinnamon rolls. My nephew overcooked the ham. Normal things. Daniel came early. He carried white tulips. His father used to bring those every spring. That detail nearly undid me. He looked nervous. Not defensive. Not proud. Just ready. Dinner passed with careful laughter. No one mentioned Vanessa, but everyone knew. Families always know. Halfway through dessert, Daniel stood up. He didn't tap a glass. Didn't clear his throat for drama. He simply stood. I owe someone an apology, he said. The room quieted. My mother deserved better, he continued. And I failed her. You could hear the refrigerator hum. I let someone hurt her, he said. And I stayed silent. His voice trembled, then steadied. I believed lies because they were easier than facing the truth. No excuses, no shifting blame, just ownership. He looked at me. I'm sorry, Mom. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rushed. It sounded like something pulled up from deep inside him. I didn't stand. I didn't cry loudly. I simply reached across the table and held his hand. His palm was warm. Unsteady. And in that stillness, something reset. No applause, no dramatic reactions, just quiet acceptance. Later, he stayed to help wash dishes. He didn't ask what to do. He just did it. Small things. Small things rebuild trust. "I've started therapy," he said softly as he dried a plate. "It's strange," he added, realizing how much chaos I normalized. I nodded. "Peace can feel unfamiliar," I told him. He smiled faintly. There was no talk of money that night, because the real shift had already happened. 2 days later, I received confirmation from Mrs. Harlan. Divorce finalized. Trust conditions satisfied. I transferred the first portion to Daniel's new account. Not as a reward, as a bridge. The following week, a padded envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was my late husband's sapphire ring, the real one. A short note was tucked beside it. "It didn't sell. Might as well give it back." No signature. There didn't need to be one. I held the ring in my palm for a long time. It felt heavier than before, not in weight, in meaning. I placed it back into its velvet box. Then I moved it to the highest shelf in my closet. Not hidden, protected. Daniel came by that evening. "She mailed it back?" he asked quietly. "Yes," he nodded. "She's living with someone else," he said. There always was someone else. I didn't ask questions. Some truths don't need to be dissected. He looked tired, but clearer. "I thought losing the house was the worst part," he said, "but losing you almost broke me." I folded a kitchen towel slowly. "Respect, once lost, can be reclaimed," I told him. "But only if you're willing to pay for it." He understood. That was enough. We sat on the porch as the sun set. No shouting, no victory speeches, just two people rebuilding something that almost collapsed. And in that silence, I finally felt free. These days, I wake up the same way. 5:30. Kettle on, green tea, 1 spoon of honey. But the quiet feels different now. It's not heavy anymore. It's steady. Daniel comes by most Sundays, sometimes with flowers, sometimes just with stories from therapy. We talk about ordinary things again. Work, weather, groceries. Normal is a gift. I didn't always know that. People have asked me if I regret what I did, if withdrawing my signature was too harsh, if revising the trust was too calculated. I always pause before answering, not because I'm unsure, because I want to choose my words carefully. She hit me in my own kitchen, so I quietly took back everything I signed for, not because I wanted revenge, because I needed respect. There's a difference. Revenge screams, it slams doors, it wants witnesses. What I did was quieter. I removed my name, I removed my permission, I removed my silence. And I waited. Waiting can feel cruel when you love someone, but love without boundaries is just permission to be diminished. Daniel had to lose something to understand what he was losing. The house was never the lesson. The silence was. The real inheritance I wanted to give him wasn't money. It was accountability. It was courage. It was the understanding that peace must be protected. The sapphire ring sits high in my closet now, safe. Not because I fear theft, because I understand value. Some things are meant to be cherished quietly, not displayed carelessly. And as for me, I sleep deeply again. Not because the world suddenly became kind, but because I finally stopped allowing myself to be small in it. Respect, once lost, can be reclaimed if you wait for the right moment. Peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from knowing you no longer allow yourself to be hurt without consequence. And that is a kind of freedom no one can sign away. Would you have done the same if you were in my place? Tell me in the comments, and if this story stayed with you, I'd be honored if you subscribed for more.